Hope you have a little bit of space in your space dock. Here's your look at the new Playmates Toys Classic Star Trek, the U.S.S. Enterprise NCC-1701. The Classic Enterprise bore the Starfleet registry number of NCC-1701. The Constitution-class starship was first launched on its maiden voyage from the San Francisco yards in 2245. From 2245 to 2264, the Enterprise had been commanded by two captains and served the Federation superbly for 14 years. The helm was then given to Captain James T. Kirk, and the Enterprise NCC-1701 went on to gain legendary status under his expert command. Fully equipped with 14 scientific laboratories, the original Enterprise was known as the premier research vessel in the Federation Starfleet. Shortly after completing its 5-year mission under James T. Kirk, the Enterprise underwent a complete overhaul to upgrade all of its major systems. The Enterprise's illustrious career was ended just prior to its scheduled retirement at the hand of its former Captain Kirk. Kirk was forced to destroy the starship in order to prevent the Klingons from gaining possession of it during a daring rescue mission. The U.S.S. Enterprise NCC-1701 is perhaps the most famous icon in all of space exploration. Before we boldly go where no one has gone before, I'd like to thank the folks over at Playmates Toys that did provide this sample of the classic Star Trek USS Enterprise NCC-1701. Truly one of the greatest ships to ever appear in a sci-fi series or movie. I'm still, though, partial towards the rehaul or retrofit, or even the NCC-1701A as my all-time favorite starship. But there's something certainly classic about the original Enterprise design. Let's go ahead now and take the tape measure. Now, I did do a few things prior to, of course, this part of this review. After I unboxed everything, I actually had to take the time and put together the nacelles, as they had to be attached separately. The support pylons, is what you see right now, have to be attached to the secondary hull on the bottom of the ship. So right now, as it's fully assembled, let's measure off just how long the Enterprise is. From the front of the saucer section to the back of the warp cells, or the warp engines, you're looking at the ship being about 17, actually, in fact, it is exactly 17 inches in length. And to flip that around, you're looking at the starship being about 44 centimeters long. Doing a little decommissioning, I actually broke down the Enterprise into the actual parts that it looks like when you get it first out of the box. The only exception to that is you also get yourself a clear acrylic display stand. This part of the post actually attaches inside of the shape, the classic Star Trek logo. And because it's actually using clear plastic, I didn't want to detach this for the risk that it could actually crack or even break it. Once you have taken this part and you attach it onto the base, I don't think there'd ever be a reason anyways you would want to detach it. But I left it together just because I didn't, again, want it to crack. Now, with a clear stand like this, you actually do have some adjustability. This whole front section does shift back and forth with a very tight screw that they've attached about midway up the neck. Then there's a secondary neck. I'm glad to see that they actually used a more solid plastic. Clear plastic would not be something you would have wanted to use for a ball joint. But this does sway also back and forth. Again, like the joints are extremely tight on this. Good for help stabilizing and keeping the ship from falling forward. Again, some other assembly that was required. I had to take the warp engines here. And then I had to take the pillars, the posts, and this had to attach to the secondary hull. Simply going to take the pylons here. And again, when you did get this out of the packaging, you want to line up everything. You'll see there's connecting points on the inside of the secondary hull. And that actually lines up to this part right here. Though there doesn't seem to be any electronics other than just wiring running through the actual nacelles. Once you connect it to here, then the battery source will also light these up as well. And when you are lining everything up, you want to just make sure, of course, you got it facing the right way. When I did it the first time around, I had it going the wrong way. Sort of look for the interior gray coloring. That's sort of your telltale sign as to which side you're going to attach it. And they actually attach pretty securely. Go ahead and do the other pylon here as well. And just, again, snap that in. And then the Enterprise is once again ready to be on display. On the bottom of it, it doesn't actually... The ball joint necessarily isn't on the neck. The ball joint is right here. But when you attach it, you're attaching this square peg to the bottom of this. And then once you attach those two, then it sits on a ball joint. A lot easier than having this been the ball joint, and then you had to, I've had that done, had that problem before when trying to get a Starfleet starship attached to a display stand. The ball joint was here, and it wouldn't, I had the hardest of times actually trying to get that to attach to the secondary hull. I think Playmates was smart by actually having the ball joint here, and only then having to require then taking the neck and adjusting it and plugging it in place. And then from there, you can still remove it, although it's not the easiest, to be fair. Like I said, it's pretty secure once it's in there. I'm going to leave it off for the time being. We're going to go back to that in a moment. The one thing I also did want to show you guys as well, here's the battery compartment. Just actually right near where that ball joint we were talking about is the battery compartment. You're going to unscrew this, and this holds and houses 3 AAA batteries. I'm just going to, again, unscrew that. Batteries were already installed. Playmates has done that for you, so you don't have to buy batteries necessarily the first time you're buying this. We're going to actually hold the Starship for right now. I'm going to just move the display stand out of the way because it probably would be a little bit easier to actually show you guys the details here on this. Now, there are settings set to this located here on the back of the secondary hull. There's actually an on, there's an off, and there's a demo. Like the phaser we looked at before, depending on which order I've actually uploaded this, the demo doesn't seem to cycle through lights. It does give you the sound effects, but it doesn't give you the lights that are accompanying with it. It does have, again, the off setting, but I've currently set to on. Again, when you want to have this, I guess, in a non-functioning mode, just switch it over to off. But we're going to switch it all the way over, I think, to demo, because I did want to show you guys, first of all, that. There are as well 3 buttons here on the top of the saucer section. And again, when you cycle through these, you're going to have different audio effects based on what exactly you're looking for. Like, for example, the first one, the button here on the top, is the ship battle sounds. So just right next to the actual top of the bridge, the first button here is the ship battle sounds. The second button right next to that is the captain command phrases. So that's your opportunity to hear James T. Kirk uttering some of those classic phrases. And then the last button is actually all your ship sounds. That's your warp, your red alerts, your hailing button, your hailing sound, are all there on then the third button. And again, we're going to go ahead and go through that in a moment. But again, I just want to show you guys the detail here first of all. The main saucer section has nicely been crafted here, going more of a lighter gray plastic. You can see all the very nice windows that they've sculpted into the plastic. The U.S.S. Enterprise, of course, NCC-1701. We're not moving to a -A yet. And of course, you've got yourself some lights there on the sides. Again, some lights both in the green and the red on either side. The only thing I would say, though, when you're looking at the ship itself, you see a lot of it here in the saucer. I see more of it, certainly, when you're looking at, like, for example, the main secondary hull, for example. It seems like the windows are maybe too large, perhaps too large. I mean, when you're also looking at, for example, like the dorsal, connecting the 2 halves together, the windows do seem like maybe a little too large. I would have maybe shrunk them down in size, for example. You've got the deflector disc nicely done here in a gold plastic. A shinier gold probably would have been nice too, but I'm glad to see that they actually colored this a really nice, almost caramel colored yellow. Of course, you got the nacelles there on the back. Those will be lit up also in a moment. Just, again, a really nice looking ship. Not overly large either, not compared for example, with some of the other starships we've looked at here on this channel. It's still a good sized ship, one perfect for displaying. And I'm sure you guys will want to see what the sound effects will look like. Just one last time to show you guys NCC-1701 on either side of the underside of the saucer section. Of course, you've got the Star Trek logo there on the side. The swoosh lines there done in the red. Again, it's a really nicely detailed ship. My only critique would be just I think that the windows are a little on the large side. Even on the engines here, the back warp thrusters, you've got the NCC-1701. Again, really nicely done. The printing is very clear on this. I don't have really any complaints whatsoever with the way they've done this. But let's go ahead. Let's cycle through some of the sounds. Now, again, when we have this right now in the demo mode, all of the sounds still work. Like, for example, your photon torpedoes, following with that, phasers. But you'll see nothing actually does light up on the ship. It only then lights up when you go back to the back of the secondary hull and you switch it then to on. Now you'll notice right away, before we even do anything, the back of the thrusters, as you can see, are all nicely done here in white. Even the back, the impulse engine, as you can see, is also white. I do wish that they could have done this more in a red than the white, but at least everything is lit up. As you can see as well, the under section there of the saucer section is also lit up. for at least right now. I mean, it turns off obviously until you're ready to start activating some of the buttons, and this would also lit up. Okay, so let's look at the sound effects here. Again, we're going to press the first button. All of the buttons are very conveniently, located here on the top of the saucer section. I mean, they're a little on the large side, but obviously for the sake of being able to access them, you would want them large enough that you don't have to, I mean, I guess they could have technically put it on here on the bottom, but if you're looking at the ship from this way, you may see it a little bit more obviously than them actually putting it at the back of the saucer instead. Anyways, we're going to press the first button. Once again, there's your photon torpedoes. The nacelles, as you can see, are lit up brightly in yellow. Again, we're going to press the button again. As we're doing also through these sound effects, you'll notice there's nothing else that really lights up on the ship. The same parts that were lit up before will still remain lit up, and there's no any secondary lights that are going to be added with any additional sound effects. Every time you're pressing the buttons, for example, even though it's going to be making the sound effects, none of the lights seem to change anywhere on the ship itself. And once again, there's only two from the front button at least. And again, we're phasers and photon torpedoes. Then we're going to get and hit the second button.
Arm photon torpedoes. Man battle stations. Photon torpedoes, fire!
The benefit, obviously, as stated already, by having this in an on mode, is that you get at least the light up options. I don't think there is a way necessarily to set this where it's always going to be on. But obviously, if you're going to have the ship always in an on mode with the lights constantly on, it's going to be draining the batteries in no time flat. And of course, one last thing, we'll press the button again. One thing I did also notice, you may also see it on mine as well, is that this nacelle is brighter than this one over here. I'm not really sure the reasoning for it, unless the bulb is maybe going on this side, or maybe I don't have it all the way in. It's illuminated, but it's not as illuminated on this side here. Maybe the bulb is going on this side of the ship.
Security alert to all decks. Arm photon torpedoes.
And then finally, one of my favorite buttons is the last one here, which again will cycle through several sounds like red alert, hailing frequencies. We'll go ahead and start pressing that right now. There's your hailing. Just the ship sounds, the interior of the bridge. Of course, the classic red alert sound. And there's your sound effects for the ship. And then once again, when it comes to displaying it, you're going to go ahead and take the display stand and snap it into place. Good, tight, and secure. And the ship's not going to be going anywhere. And because, of course, it's also still relying on the ball joint for the actual secondary hull, you can actually get the ship in an angled pose. It doesn't have to be completely straight. Unfortunately, though, if you're going to be swinging it to the side like this, it's going to throw off the balancing. The display stand should have been bigger in a situation like that, but at least you can still actually get some decent poses going for the ship. Like if you want to have an angle, you want to have it a little higher up, or you can also, again, bring it down. It's a nice reproduction of the USS Enterprise, the classic look of the USS Enterprise before we start adding any extra letters on the end of it. Again, my only thing I would say is now, other than just the nacelle not being as bright on that side as this side right here, I'm going to have to see if I can double check. I don't know if maybe the bulb is gone on it, for example. The only other thing I would say is, while I do like the coloring on it, I think they've done a nice job of decaling all the markings of the USS Enterprise. I do think like the windows are maybe a tad bit too large. Maybe would have maybe made them just a little bit smaller. But I think, like, other than that, Playmates Toys has nailed and captured a perfect looking Enterprise. One that's affordable as well, because aftermarket, trying to track down some of those earlier Enterprises that have been released by other companies in the past. Now, if you want to get your hands on an Enterprise that has, again, fully functioning lights and sounds, you can't do any bit better than what we're getting right now with Playmates Toys. In between takes, before we jumped on over to final looks, I ended up removing one of the pylons, the one that was giving me trouble where the nacelle wasn't as bright. I popped it off, popped it back in. Sure enough, it works fine. Being the fact that it wasn't actually hardwired, keeping in mind as well they're using like metal connecting points, it might have just been the case where the connection wasn't as secure, and it would have resulted in one of the nacelles not being as bright as the other. Once again, like I said, I removed it, popped it back in place, and both nacelles are just as bright as they did when I started this review. It's a nice looking Enterprise. I really think that Playmates has done a great job on this. One of my favorite things about the Enterprise is not even the Enterprise itself, is the way it attaches onto the display stand. The display stand uses a 2 connection point system. You have a ball joint, but it's already in the secondary hull. Instead of actually trying to force a ball joint into the secondary hull, which I've had to do before in other earlier looks at Star Trek starships, they made it simple. They made it easy. All you have to do is take that square peg, pop it into the already socketed ball joint, and you're good to go. You get a good, stable, secure grip. And again, being that it's not a ball joint that you have to contend with, you don't have to worry about forcing that in and potentially breaking the ball joint. It's a really nice representation of what we get here for the classic Starship Enterprise, NCC-1701, before we start tacking on any letters to it. Though, speaking of tacking on letters, while I'm a big fan of the classic look of the Enterprise, I hope, though, at some point Playmates Toys considers releasing an NCC-1701A. Easily my favorite of all the Enterprises. Once again, a big thank you to the folks over at Playmates Toys that did provide this sample of the new classic Star Trek Starship Enterprise we can have a look at in this video. For your question down below, let me know, what's your favorite make and model of the Enterprise? Is it the original one? Is it the rehaul? Is it the A, the B, the C, the D, the E? I think we are also going to be getting an F pretty soon. But what's your favorite version of the Enterprise? Let me know down below in the comment section. Also, as well, if you enjoyed this video, hit it with a like. If you're loving the content you're seeing and do want to certainly stick around for more, then make sure you hit the subscribe button down below and turn on the bell notification. And while we have packed up things right now for the Enterprise, there may be more Star Trek reviews coming your way in the not-so-distant future. And as always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.